Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Written and images by S. Narration by AI Workstream. Image animation. Vir AI. Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Chapter 6. The Wandmaker's Tale.
For a few moments, no one spoke. The question sat where Harry left it, living in the space between them like a fourth presence at the table. Ollivander's hands remained folded, the tips of his fingers touching lightly as though he could feel the shape of the answer without yet choosing the words. Tomás had gone still, too, his earlier brightness held in check by the way the older man's silence carried weight. Even the room seemed to pause with them. The knights stayed motionless in their corners. The portraits watched without comment, eyes tracking the table, the food, the tiny shifts in posture, the quiet recalibrations people made when something important had been said. Harry didn't look away. He didn't press. He learned, over years of being answered late, that the best truths arrived only after you let them take their time. The soup bowls vanished. Not with flair, not with sound, just gone, as though they had never been there at all. In their place appeared plates of salad, greens arranged with careful restraint, sliced fruit laid in neat arcs, a simple dressing that smelled faintly of herbs. It was the sort of course meant to keep the body occupied while the mind did its harder work. Ollivander's gaze lifted, briefly acknowledging the timing, then returned to Harry.
What you are asking, Mr. Potter, is not a simple question.
Mr. Ollivander said at last. He spoke as though stating a fact about wood grain, about density, about the direction a core preferred to settle. Matter of fact, but not casual.
I remember every wand I ever made. And to whom the wand chose.
Tomás's eyes flicked toward him, eager, then quickly away, as though afraid to interrupt the line of thought. Ollivander's attention did not waver.
You are asking for secrets, Mr. Potter, secrets that any second-tier wandmaker would trade years of work to learn.
Tomás could not contain himself. He jumped forward in his chair as if the words physically lifted him.
For example, Harry.
He blurted, and the name came out before he remembered to be formal, before he remembered the portraits, before he remembered the weight at the head of the table. Ollivander's eyes shifted toward him, not sharp, not angry, just present. Tomás swallowed, then continued anyway, caught in a kind of daze, the way people got when they were speaking about the first thing they had ever made that felt real.
That blue smoke, that was from my first successful wand. Maple and hippogriff feather, 10 3/4 inches. Rigid and unruly.
Tomás said with his voice thick with pride and disbelief at the same time while imagining himself in the workshop again. He continued, a bit soft and more reverent as if stunned by his own words.
It's more than pride or ego. It's like a carpenter making their first chair every time they make a chair. It's not something wandmakers forget.
Ollivander made a quiet sound, approval and restraint in the same breath. Harry looked at Tomás, then back to Ollivander. He understood what Tomás had just done. He offered a piece of himself, not because Harry demanded it, but because the subject invited it. Harry set his fork down without touching the salad. He kept his voice steady.
I'm not here to take anything from you. Whatever is said stays at this table.
Ollivander's eyes stayed on him, pale, watchful. Harry continued, careful with every word while acknowledging the obviousness of the portraits.
It stays between the three of us. And well, whatever else in this house listens.
Something in Ollivander's expression shifted, small, almost imperceptible. Appreciation, not relief. He nodded once. Tomás sat back, chastened again, but still glowing, like he had just touched the edge of a world he had wanted his whole life. Ollivander's gaze returned to Harry. His fingers tapped once against the table, a habit, a marker, the way he might have tested balance in a wand.
Very well.
His fingers rested flat against the table now, no longer tapping.
Before one can understand why a wand behaves as yours did, one must understand how a wand is made. Properly made. You already know of the two components most people speak of, the wood and the core. Those are the visible parts. The parts written about.
Tomás nodded along eagerly.
But a good wandmaker never speaks lightly of the bond.
Tomás straightened at once.
You must take note of this, Tomás.
Tamars quickly said, "Yes, sir," and a quill appeared in his hand out of habit.
Not on paper.
Tamars flushed, banished the quill into thin air and said,
For memory.
Ollivander inclined his head and stated in a matter-of-fact tone,
Tamars, we must be prudent in whom we share family knowledge and wand lore. Any ledger or account lying around is an opportunity for opportunists.
Yes, sir. I understand.
Ollivander continued.
The bond is as critical to the viability of a wand as the wood and the core themselves. It is the element that determines whether a wand will hold under pressure.
Tamars shifted in his chair.
Almost any magical element can serve as a core, and almost any magical element can serve as a bonding agent. That is where lesser wand makers make their mistakes.
A faint, unmistakable note of disapproval entered his voice.
They experiment freely and chase novelty. They confuse rarity with wisdom. And that is something Gregorovitch never fully understood.
Tamar swallowed, looked up sharply but said nothing.
The bond must be used sparingly, chosen with restraint. And only when the wand requires it.
Ollivander paused as he turned his gaze back to Harry. When he spoke again, it was with the tone of a man stepping into memory, not because he enjoyed it, but because he respected it.
That was a peculiar night.
The words landed with the weight of a heavy door being opened.
I already closed the shop. The cases were sealed, the tools put away, and only one candle remained and a window to shut. I really enjoy the night air. Quiet. Peaceful. Easy to work, no distractions.
He lifted his hand slightly, as though remembering the motion.
I reached to extinguish the flame. And that is when the bird arrived. It didn't rush, it landed on the sill as though it always intended to. Scarlet and gold, every feather warm but not burning. Contained. Watching.
Tamars went very still, hanging on to every word as if he'd slip off a cliff if he missed one.
Such a beautiful, remarkable creature. Simply remarkable.
A faint smile touched his mouth.
I greeted it and told it the day was done. That it was welcome to return in the morning. So, I extinguished the candle.
Ollivander lowered his fingers.
The flame returned. I looked back thinking that maybe I didn't let it out completely. But the bird stood beside the candle, just looking at me.
Ollivander exhaled.
I told it that I had no more work that night, and the phoenix tilted its head and looked at me. Not defiance. No. It was certainty. So I told it that I had time for one more, and it seemed to incline its head in a satisfactorily sort of nod.
The dining room did not change, but Harry felt the shift anyway, the way a place leaned in when work was about to begin. Ollivander rose from the table with care, the memory no longer abstract but fully inhabited now.
I began as I always do, with the wood. I selected maple first, a fine wood. Responsive. Clear in temperament. I set it on the table. Centered. Balanced. Then, I turned away to retrieve a core.
He moved as he spoke, not reenacting so much as remembering the motions precisely. In his mind, the long work table was there again, scarred and familiar, its surface cleared except for a single length of pale wood. His fingers curled slightly, recalling the sound before the sight. A dull, unmistakable tap.
I heard it strike the floor. I assumed it had rolled. It happens. Wood settles. Tables shift. Old places breathe. I picked the wood up and set it back to where it belonged.
He shook his head faintly at himself. Harry could see it, the wand-length maple resting obediently once more.
I turned again. This time, there was a distinct sound with it. A soft, sharp clack. And a small squawk.
Tamars leaned forward despite himself.
The bird nudged it off the table. Not violently. Deliberately. I looked at it and it looked back at me as though I were the one being inattentive.
A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, then vanished. Ollivander drew a breath.
I replaced the maple. Again. I turned. Again. The wood hit the floor a third time, harder with less ambiguity. This time, I did not mistake the cause. The phoenix kicked it. I told myself I was reading meaning where there was none. Perhaps fatigue finally caught up with me.
A small sound escaped to Mars before he could stop it. Ollivander did not admonish him. He folded his hands together, remembering the next choice. He glanced briefly at Harry.
So I changed woods. Vine, adaptable. Curious. Willing to wander. I set it on the table with more intention this time, watching it settle, testing its balance. I did not turn my back. I reached for a core, ensuring to maintain eye contact with the phoenix. The bird waited. Then, with a light hop, it kicked the vine.
The vine skidded across the table and struck the stone floor with a hollow sound. Ollivander exhaled through his nose. Then, he lifted his gaze, pinning the memory in place.
The phoenix was not rejecting my choice of core, it was rejecting my choice of wood. A silence fell between us. Not the polite kind. The kind that settles when a rule is being written. I retrieved the maple, then the second maple. Then the vine. I did not place them back on the table, I set them aside.
Mars swallowed.
I asked the bird what it wanted. And those words hung there, heavy with implication. I knew phoenixes do not speak, but I also knew they are not subtle. I did not move at once. I simply stood there with 3 rejected woods at my feet and a bird that made its position exceedingly clear.
He lifted his chin slightly, as though seeing the shelves again.
So, I did what any sensible wandmaker does when sense has failed him. I looked to what remained. There were others already prepared, cut, seasoned, waiting.
His fingers twitched, recalling the feel of them. Harry felt the air tighten.
I reached for holly first. A beautiful wood. Protective. Proud. It responds well to conviction. The bird objected. Not violently. A sharp, disapproving cry.
Ollivander seemed to be lost in the memory, fully submerged in its recollection.
Very well, not you. What about ash? A loyal wood. Particularly fond of a single master. Allegiance not transferred easily.
Ollivander looked up at Harry, returning to the moment.
The phoenix flared its wings slightly and another squawk. More insistent. So, I tried oak. Strong. Steadfast. Deep-rooted magic. The bird did not even wait for me to touch it. A sharp cry, wings lifting, feathers bristling. No. None of those.
Ollivander exhaled and glanced at Mars and back to Harry.
At that point, I began to understand I was not being guided toward preference. I was being guided away from everything else.
The room seemed to narrow again, funneling toward what remained unsaid.
There was only one piece of wood left in the shop that night, not prepared. Not shaped. Not even truly considered. A single log. You.
The word landed without flourish. Mars's breath caught.
I kept it sealed, wrapped and warded. It had been cut decades earlier and left untouched. You does not like to be rushed. I lifted it from the rack, and for the first time that evening.
Ollivander allowed himself the smallest smile. Harry watched him carefully.
The bird made no sound. No squawk. No protest. No flare of wings. It only watched, its head tilted. Still. That was when I knew.
He set his hands flat on the table, grounding the memory.
This was not a task to be completed before dawn. You does not forgive impatience. And a phoenix does not involve itself lightly. I extinguished the candle again, not because I was done, but because I would need a new one.
A faint breath of amusement passed him. Ollivander looked up, meeting Harry's eyes directly now.
And that was the moment I accepted I would not sleep. It was going to be a very long night.
I hope you enjoyed this reading of Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Chapter 6, The Wandmaker's Tale. You're invited to join us next week, as the rambunctious Fawkes continues his visit with the Wandmaker in Harry Potter and the Death of the U. Chapter 7, The Holly and the U. Written by S. Rube.